Let's kick things off with a number that might just blow you away: 60%. Get this, that's how much of the gross national product in Latin America and the Caribbean comes from family-controlled businesses. It's an absolutely massive figure. And it tells you one thing loud and clear. If you really want to understand the economy in this part of the world, you have to understand the family firm.
But here's the thing. As we're about to see, these are not your average run-of-the-mill family businesses. Nope. They're playing a completely different game with a whole different set of pressures and even a completely different definition of what family even means. So today, we are diving deep into the unwritten rules that make these economic powerhouses tick.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with a core idea called socioemotional wealth. Then we'll see how the unique Latin American context throws a wrench in the works. We'll break down the 5 key dimensions, see what it all means for taking risks, and finally, why in business, context is absolutely king.
Okay, so first things first. Let's lay the groundwork with the standard blueprint for family businesses, the world over. It's a concept that goes way, way beyond just dollars and cents.
It's called socioemotional wealth, or SEW for short. Think of it as all the non-financial value a family gets from its business. We're talking about family pride, the company's reputation, the legacy they're building. For so many of these firms, protecting this emotional secret sauce is actually more important than just raking in profits.
And this whole idea is often broken down with a handy acronym, FIBER. That's F for family influence, I for identification, B for binding social ties, E for emotional attachment, and R for renewal. Now, this is the standard model, right? The textbook version. But what happens when you drop it into a radically different environment?
Because in Latin America and the Caribbean, or LAC for short, there's 2 unique factors that don't just tweak this model. They basically tear it up and rewrite it from scratch.
First off, the very definition of family is a whole different ballgame. You see, Western models tend to focus on the nuclear family, parents and kids. But the LAC model is all about the extended family. We're talking grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, you name it. And it even includes non-blood members who are considered deep parts of the clan, like a compadre or comadre. The boundaries are just way more permeable, which creates this huge, complex web of people right at the heart of the business.
And the second game changer? It's the environment itself, often summed up by the acronym VUCA. Think constant volatility, deep uncertainty, overwhelming complexity from things like weak institutions and bureaucracy, and ambiguity about, just about everything. It's a chaotic, unpredictable landscape that these family firms have to navigate every single day.
So what happens when you take that classic fiber model and filter it through this lens of a massive extended family and a chaotic VUCA world? Well, let's go dimension by dimension and see how the rules get totally remixed.
All right, first up, F is for family influence. The need for control is always strong in a family business, but here, it gets seriously amplified. Control becomes a tool to provide jobs for the entire clan, and in a VUCA world, it's a critical defense mechanism to protect your assets. But, and this is a huge but, there's a paradox. To actually survive, they also have to balance that iron-fisted control with outside accountability.
Next up, I for identification. Think of this as the family name literally on the front of the building.
In a world with shaky institutions, having a name people trust is a massive advantage. But it's a double-edged sword, and the other side can be really dangerous. A high-profile reputation can attract all sorts of negative attention, from public scrutiny to serious security threats, even things like kidnappings.
Then we have B for binding social ties. In a chaotic environment, networks built on trust aren't just important. They're pretty much everything.
These relationships aren't just nice-to-haves. They're an absolute survival tool. You hire people you can really rely on, just to create some predictability. But to truly thrive, these firms also have to build ties outside the family, often with foreign partners to get their hands on resources they can't find locally.
Okay, next is E for emotional attachment. The lines between family and business are always a little fuzzy, right? Well, here, they practically disappear. What the research shows is that emotions in this context just run hotter, both the positive and the negative. Now, that creates a clear vulnerability to outside threats, but it also forges this incredible resilience, a kind of personal strength, and an ability to find joy even when things are tough.
And finally, we have R for renewal, the all-important act of passing the torch to the next generation.
Having an extended family means you've got a bigger pool of potential heirs, which fuels those dynastic ambitions. But you can probably guess the flip side, right? More potential for conflict. In a VUCA world, succession isn't just about legacy, it's a core survival strategy. But maybe the biggest threat of all is that the next generation, seeing all the chaos, might just decide to emigrate and leave the whole thing behind.
Okay, so let's just take a breath. We've seen how every single dimension of socioemotional wealth gets twisted and transformed. And all of this leads to a profound shift in how these firms operate, challenging some of the most basic assumptions we have about how family businesses handle risk.
This all leads to a really key insight. LAC family firms are both SOW intensive, meaning they prioritize all 5 of those dimensions more intensely, and they're SOW sensitive, meaning they're more willing to adapt and be flexible with them in order to survive.
And this is the real payoff. It creates a whole new logic for making decisions. Standard theory says firms will risk their finances to protect their SEW, but in the LAC model, it's what they call a mixed gamble. They don't see SEW and profit as a trade-off. Instead, they see them as complementary assets, 2 sides of the same coin, both absolutely essential for survival.
And that brings us to our final, and maybe our most important takeaway. Because this deep dive into one specific region offers a really powerful lesson for understanding business anywhere in the world.
It shows that you can't just take a one-size-fits-all theory off the shelf and expect it to work everywhere. Culture, institutions, the environment, in other words, context, can completely rewrite the rules of the game. So the question this all leaves us with is this: what are the unwritten rules, the invisible forces of family, culture, and environment that are shaping the businesses in your own backyard?